All right, welcome back to the Fabrication Station podcast. I'm your host, Mike Wagner from Cornfield Customs in Milford, Ohio. We have Brian Ward back as our co-host this week.
Hello.
And our special guest this week is Jordan Dickinson. Welcome, Jordan.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do? Pretty much your shop, what you do, what you're known for, pretty much anything you want to tell us about what's going on your side of the country.
Sure. I own a shop in Osseo, Minnesota here called Union Speed and Style. And basically we specialize in high performance and specialty vehicle construction, whether that's motorcycle based or automotive based. We do a lot of chassis fabrication, sheet metal shaping, and then also leather work. That's kind of our three areas of main focus. We don't do any kind of paint work or any of that sort of stuff, but we do try and specialize and get a lot of like full ground up builds. That's what we like to do the best. But like I said, the only thing we really don't get into is any kind of paint work or anything like that. So that's the basic rundown of what we're into.
I can feel you on the paint and body stuff. Like I don't do much of that here anymore. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, you do body work," and I'm like, that's kind of a gray area because we make body panels and aluminum bodies, but I wouldn't say that's what most people know as body work.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of the gray area with the terminology there.
Yeah.
You do leather work? Is that tooled leather? Or?
We do some tooled leather, but upholstery work. I just generally use the leather work term just because, like on the motorcycle side, that's kind of how people refer to it, and on the automotive side, it just ends up being upholstery. But
okay,
it's a wide range of things on that. So. Primarily lately, it's been a lot more motorcycle seats than anything. I've been kind of spacing out the interior jobs that we've been taking in, just because they're kind of they're real time consuming, and it's they get expensive and hard to do, and just been focusing on a lot of other projects that we've been trying to stay steady on. So
yeah, and I think. I started following you on Instagram, man, I don't know how many years ago it was, but it was right when you first bought your current building and you started the rehab on that. I mean, your shop is super cool with the vintage pictures and all that stuff, and kind of the whole restoration of your building is super impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a huge undertaking. It was... We opened up our shop originally in 2004, myself and my two older brothers, and we were out in another small town about another 30 minutes away from here. Did a bunch of work on that building, but we were always leasing it, and then we purchased the building next to us at the time in 2006 or so, and started doing some build out on that as well, and then the recession stuff all happened and whatnot. But so we got out of that main building that we were leasing and into this dumpy little warehouse that we were in, and that was not at all like what we have now. And we kind of wanted to have something that get back to having something that had like a nice showroom in it and stuff. And it just kind of worked out. It took a long time to find something, and it just kind of worked out that we found this old Ford dealership from 1914, and it needed a ton of work. I mean, by all accounts, like it would have been smarter to tear this building down and just start over, because it was it needed so much work and so much love. But that was kind of the only way that we knew we were going to get into something like this. Just because you can't really, I shouldn't say you can't, but it's hard to try and build something with this kind of character in it is really hard to do nowadays, just because of like the way that construction code is and everything else. And this has like the old trusses that are hot set rivets in them and everything that that was in there just like it was from 1914. But the process of that took, quite a few years with my brother and I primarily doing the majority of the work after hours and on the weekends. And obviously we'd have friends and family that would come in and help us and stuff. But I mean, we took it down. I mean, it's just like you would do a car. We took it down to nothing and built it back up.
Yeah, because I think I remember, didn't you bust all the concrete out and dig everything out and pour all new concrete? And
Yep.
yeah, I remember seeing
we
redoing brick walls. I'm like, man, this is a serious undertaking.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is people come in now and they're just like, oh man, this is amazing. You're able to find a building like this. And it's like, well, yes and no. Like, start walking through and pointing out like, yeah, well, the brick wasn't here. And, these old doors, these were, sourced from a place down in Omaha, and like just all that stuff. And when they kind of realize like, oh, well, this was essentially a restoration project, but, we more or less hot rodded out the building, it was a ton of work. I'm really glad we did it, and I'm glad that it's 90% done, but like I'm pretty sure it took a couple of years off my life. It was just nonstop thrash.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I think anytime you're doing work on, like even my building, it's not nearly that old or that cool, but when you're doing maintenance and additions on your shop and changing walls and stuff, I mean, it's so stressful, and it's intense because it just amplifies everything else going on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and the big thing too, with a lot of what we did with this, the city that we were previously in was, redeveloping that area, the old downtown that we were in, and the timing just ended up working out that they wanted to buy our building, our old building, for that redevelopment. It was kind of an anchor building for that, which we were totally okay with, but we needed to find a new place, and this spot kind of came up, and part of the deal that we worked out with them was that we were able to stay in our old building for essentially like a year and a half, so that we could build out this new spot and everything else, because we knew that if we had like tried to do the construction while we were in here working as well, there's just no way it would have gotten finished, because it's just too hard, especially when you're working around expensive customer vehicles that are just it's too much of a possibility for something getting wrecked. What I mean?
Yeah, and it's hard. Me and my wife were talking about it the other day. When I bought my building, I didn't want people coming over until, like I had rehabbed the office and the showroom and the front of the building, and, got the bathrooms fixed and the flooring down. And
100%.
Everybody's like, why does that matter? And I'm like, well, you get new customers that are excited about your space. They're going to come in, and if the front looks like a dump, that's not the first impression you want. So it's you want to keep that kind of separate until everything's ready to come together. And it's hard to 100%. Describe.
Yeah, you really want. It helps when the space also reflects the level of work that you're trying to produce.
Yeah.
And I think people see that. And a big thing with this too is we get questions a lot of times too, because I mean, like it would have been really easy to just find a nice plot of land out of the city a little bit, put up a nice building and everything else, and not deal with any of the BS with this. But a big part of building these cars, for us, obviously we get a little jaded because we're working on things all day and in and out. It ends up essentially becoming a job a little bit, but it's a fun job. But at the end of the day, like you said, you do become a little jaded, and you forget that for the customer, it's a different experience than it is for us building the cars, right?
Yeah.
So when they come in, like if this space is cool and like they're super excited about their car and everything else, like it just kind of it kind of builds the whole experience up.
Yeah. Adds to the experience for the customer.
And if a guy's spending the kind of money it takes to do these cars, like, well, we want the whole experience to be good, start to finish. So
Yeah, because like I've talked to some friends that had their shops, and I mean they were a little bit sloppy, trash piled up next to the trash can, and their work area is a disaster. And I mean they do amazing work, but I'm like the thing you're going to realize is if you had a customer that was coming in to spend $200,000 to $500,000 on some weird project, I would probably get the job over you, even if you're more skilled, just due to the cleanliness and tidiness.
Yeah.
It sounds dumb. You would think the most skilled person would get the job, but the type of people that are willing to spend that money, they expect a certain atmosphere and cleanliness, and they're like, oh, if he's kind of sloppy, in his workspace, is he going to be sloppy in my project? It's
Right. Yeah.
I talk about smoke and mirrors all the time, but that's everything. You got
Yep.
the floor has to be clean and mopped, and you just clean up after yourself as you go. That way your shop is never a disaster, because you never know when that one client is just going to be in town and they want to pop in and they don't give you any notice. They're like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm at McDonald's down the street. Can I drop in? And you're like, shit, I got 3 hours worth of cleaning to do before I'm presentable.
Yeah. And that's, because it's tough too, because you never know when a guy comes in and it inevitably happens. Like you try and clean up, and even still, it's like, shit,
Yeah.
maybe it's getting a little sloppy today. Like, and it's almost, I don't want to say it's embarrassing, but you're self-conscious about it. Like,
Oh, yeah.
shit, and it definitely matters more to some customers than it does to others. You just never know. Plus I feel like it helps produce better work, nicer work.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure.
I work way better in a cleaner environment.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just you're more efficient because you know where everything is. You're not digging through boxes and piles of tools and like, oh, I know this wrench was, under this piece of paper 2 weeks ago, and some people can work in that. I knew an old guy. I'd be like, hey Bob, where's your 9/16 wrench? And he's like, fifth pile of magazines over. There's a street rod from 1982. It's on page 14, and like that's exactly where it would be. But I'm like, how would you know that? But
Yeah.
I just can't work in those kind of situations, and it just, like you said, it makes everything better. If your workspace is clean, your quality of work's going to be clean. The final product's going to be clean.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, your work is super cool, and I love your building too. It's such a neat facility. If I ever get up that way, I'd like to stop by and check it out sometime, because I like old architecture just as much as I like old cars and equipment.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you'll have to. You'll have to
Yeah.
stop in.
Yeah, because I don't get up that way a whole lot anymore. You're outside of Minneapolis?
Yeah, we're about 15, 20 minutes outside of downtown.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, because I used to go out and buy cars out in North and South Dakota, and I'd go to Thief River Falls, Minnesota all the time, which is, it's way out there.
oh yeah. North Dakota, South Dakota, man, that's the spot to go.
Yeah.
Minnesota cars are usually pretty roached. I mean, just with the humidity from all the lakes and stuff, but also you start getting into some of the later year stuff. It's the salt on the roads and whatnot just
Yeah.
ruined them.
Yeah, because I don't remember the town I was in, but I was in South Dakota, and it was like an hour and a half from Thief River Falls, which is right across the border there. And we drove to his place, and it was totally different. Just in that hour and a half, like you said, they went from nice solid bodies to just borderline garbage. But it's just how it is.
That's also kind of we like to joke that's also kind of why this state in particular ends up, or I mean, it's kind of everywhere, I guess, but with all the cars being that shitty, it helps produce better metal workers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you have to replace every panel on the damn thing, because you never find a good car around here.
Exactly. I mean, that's probably why I'm as good as what I put out is at the quality it is, because I can't get stuff here, so you have to make it all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you have some time to get into some questions.
Cool. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. The first question is: do you have any game changer builds in your work or coming up in the near future?
So I don't know if I'd throw game changer out there, but we have some real fun builds that we're doing that we're pretty excited about. Right now we're kind of in a weird phase of builds where we have a lot of the stuff that we're working on, we're taking a kind of a midway point for the customers, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not, we're not taking them to full completion. So we've got a really cool 34 5-window coupe that we're doing. We're pretty happy with that one. We built a complete one-off chassis for it, and just kind of going through redoing all the metalwork on that. It's got an old chop on it that was done, I don't know, 70s, 80s, somewhere in there. That was not. It's exactly what you'd expect from that era.
Yeah.
From the majority of work that would come out of that era. So it needs a lot of cleaning up. So that one's going to be pretty awesome. I love doing work on the Model 40 stuff. It's kind of nice to have that in here. And then we've got a Model A coupe that we just chopped. Did a bunch of work for that customer. That's gonna be a fun little hot rod. Model A Roadster that we're working on, that one's pretty cool. It's we've been calling it like the 31.5 or like a AB Roadster, because it's a 3031 Roadster body, and then we put it on 32 sub rails. So it's sitting on a 32 frame, obviously, but we used the 32 Roadster sub rails, and then basically extended the body just a little bit, and then more or less raised it up a little or brought the body down to meet the 32 sub rails, I should say.
Okay.
Flush mounted the doors, kind of basically took a 3031 and mashed it up with a 32, which I think 95% of 95% of the public, even car people, won't really know. It's going to be people that really understand or really are into these old early Ford stuff that will look at it and be like, hey, what's, you kind of catch those oddball little changes.
Yeah, those are always the cool ones where they're like, something's not right, but I don't know what it is. And like, for me, that's really rewarding, because like, I've done my job. It doesn't stand out like a sore thumb, but something's not right.
Yeah, somebody it's different, but what is it?
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that we love doing. Like it's just kind of fun to tweak on them that way,
Mm-hmm.
Make those subtle little changes, especially when it just seems like right now we've got a ton of that kind of early, I guess, quote unquote, traditional style kind of hot rod stuff. But and it's an era that we all love. We're really super into, but you just never know what your workload's going to be, right? Like we could have a bunch of this stuff in here right now, and then 6 months or a year from now, suddenly we could be working on a bunch of later model stuff. That just depends what the customer base ends up bringing in. But
and like I found most people don't realize that everything comes in groups. At least I found that here. I'll get one sedan, like a Model A sedan, and then all of a sudden 2 more will show up. Or I'll do a 34 and then 2 more show up. And I don't know how it works out like that, but it always does. Whatever is coming into the shop, it sends feelers out to its friends and says, hey, we got our foot in the door, come here. It's just so strange, like how it's always 3 or 4 of the same thing at the same time.
Yeah, 100%. We had, I think what it comes down to is people just, I don't know if they feel like you must just specialize in one type of car or something, because we had I don't know, probably 7 or 8 years ago, we had just a group of the like 49 to 50 Chevy, kind of that style, body style, come through the shop, and it was just odd, because it was like we'd bring you bring those out to show at the car shows and whatnot, and all of a sudden you get a guy that comes up like, oh, you work on these? Like you guys will work on this style car? It's like, yeah, we'll work on anything. It doesn't have to be just this. And then, like you said, next thing you know, you got 3 in there, and another couple of guys calling you because suddenly you're the 50 Chevy guys.
Yeah.
But
do you have a cutoff on your shop? Is there a certain model year you like to stay below, or?
No, we'll get into all sorts of weird stuff. I mean, I try and keep it, 20s, 30s on up to even late 60s stuff. That's ideally what we like working on. But we've worked on some newer stuff too. We had a Lamborghini in here a few years ago. That was a super oddball one for us, but it was kind of fun.
Yeah, like a newer Lamborghini or like a late 60s, 70s?
No, like a new one. Yeah,
Okay.
like a banana yellow. Look at me, Lamborghini.
Yeah.
It was it was a fun project. It was kind of a weird deal. It was a repairable that he got, and we did essentially fixed some framework, the aluminum framework underneath, or sub framework, I should say. But yeah, I don't think I need to work on. I like working on the supercar stuff, but I don't think I need to have a whole shop full of those. It's a totally different type of work.
Yeah, and that's like I wouldn't say a newer thing for me. I'm not a supercar guy. Like, my idea of a supercar is a GT40, like
right.
60s Le Mans style car. So I've been dabbling more in the European stuff, with the Aston Martin and Rolls Royce and that kind of stuff, just because there's not a lot of people around me that like to do aluminum sheet metal work. So
sure, yeah.
Somehow I get attracted to that. And
yeah.
So I've been kind of trying to dabble more in that, and it's kind of a weird thing because for a long time my cutoff was 1950. I didn't want to deal with anything newer than that because that's when all the rust started and they designed everything to fail in 10 years. And you get a muscle car and like, I just got a couple blisters on the quarter. Well, if the quarter's blistered, the inner wheelhouse is bad, the outer wheelhouse is bad. It never ends.
Yeah. Well, it's a different type of construction too. So like your mindset, you have to be in the right mindset for working on that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Versus, something with a full frame under it. You go about things a little bit differently, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So I'd love to do some of the early European sports car stuff. Like, I'm into that, but seems like that's just a whole different type of car guy. It's a whole different group of people.
It's super frustrating for me because like the styling is super rad, and you think of 60s Ferraris and Lamborghinis and the start of the European supercar era, and the money they bring, you would expect them to be amazing, fit, finish, beautiful work. It's far from it, I mean.
Yeah, they're pretty crude.
Oh yeah, they can be up to
right down to it.
A couple inches different side to side because you had Tommy on one side and Danny on the other, and they met in the middle. It's not what most people think, and it really frustrates me because growing up and seeing this stuff, it's always been put on a pedestal, but most of them were legit race cars, so they're super crude. And they've been at races, and the door, something happens to the door, and they take a hammer and they just beat it in, and they leave it, and it's
truly handmade.
Definitely.
No real specifics when trying to fit stuff. Just like you said, with the panels being different from side to side, like you run into that with even some of the old Jag stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. And who knows what work's been done on the stuff over the years. You run into that shit too, but.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've been getting into, it was a few years ago, a guy called me and said, hey, I've got this 64 Lamborghini GT250. It's one of the first production Lambos made. And they backed into the front of it with a forklift and caved the nose in. And
jeez.
And he's like, well, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, you get a hammer and you beat it out. And, I went down there and they were all freaking out. And I just took a mallet and started pounding it back out. I'm like, what else are you going to do?
Yeah. It's all metal, man.
Yeah.
It's just different shapes.
That's right. Yeah. And the weird thing with that question is like the game changer thing. I'm not big on the term. Like everything's been done in one shape, form, whatever.
Yeah.
And like me personally, I'm not out to set the world on fire. I just like to build cool shit. So
100%. I think that's kind of a lot of the stuff we do here. We're more, if we specialize in any kind of style, I would say that we're more on the side of subtlety than anything else. You know what I mean? Like, I want to do things different than we've seen, but I also don't want to do something different just to be like, oh, look at this fucking wild thing we did just because nobody else has done it. Like that doesn't that doesn't get me excited, you know.
Yeah.
I'd really rather make something that's gonna hopefully stay classic and people be excited about for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years from now, rather than just like, man, that was really cool for a summer. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I did a Model A Roadster for my uncle many years ago, and he's like, I want something that looks like, it could have been right out of the 50s or 60s. I wanted that traditional look. So, of course it was, dark leather interior and like a vintage burgundy, timeless, black rims, black tires, no goofy stuff, just something that'll be classy forever. And
Yep.
it was getting ready to go to the paint shop, and he's like, have you seen that new green that's on those Camaros? And I'm like,
No.
I'm like, absolutely not. And he's like, oh, you haven't seen it? I'm like, no, you're not putting it on that car. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's such a pretty color. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty for like a weekend.
Yeah.
And then you take it back to the rental agency, like, do not. I'm like, that car will be hideous in 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah. Well, and you see it play out all too often, right? Like every year it's, whatever new thing is out. It's like when all the, I remember distinctly when that color flop paint came out.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Hey man, that was the coolest thing for a few months, and then it was like everybody's putting it on everything, and it just kind of, I absolutely hate it now. Anytime I see it,
Oh,
yeah.
it's like, oh god,
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if it's worse than the Easter egg stuff or not, but
Yeah. I think it even probably devalued the cars that came from the factory with that paint.
Yeah.
Because it was put on everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I'm nervous with that paint because like the Roadster I'm doing for Bonneville, we're using that new Mazda color that's like a bright ruby red. And I mean, it's a super pretty color. I'm just afraid that it's not going to be pretty after like a year. I'm going to be so burned out on it. So it's,
yeah, but I think on a race car it's a little different.
Yeah.
Like race car's supposed to be kind of loud.
yeah.
So you'll probably be all right.
Yeah.
It's a pretty color. It's
Yeah.
hard to go wrong with anything in the red family.
Yeah.
you know?
Worst comes to worst, I'll shoot it in a black tractor paint. We'll call it a day.
Probably be able to see it real well out there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Give it a scuff and shoot.
Nice contrast.
Yep. So the next question is, how's progress on your Bonneville car?
Yeah, so that's, if there is any car in here that I'm like, yeah, we're shooting for the moon on it'd be that one. The Bonneville, we're going for the XF competition coupe class, and we're building around a 34 Ford 5-window. Super excited about the build. Really excited about who we're building it for and everything. Just has become customer's become a really good friend, and it's a fun process when we get to do stuff with them. So
Yeah. And I don't have the rule book in front of me. What's the current record in that class?
so we're going for 2 different records initially. So he wants to go for the naturally aspirated fuel and gas, and I think it's essentially we got to hit 156,
Okay.
which that's a pretty lofty goal, honestly, in a naturally aspirated flathead.
Yeah, yeah. Which, I mean, we're about in the same boat other than just being a Roadster because we're also in the XF class.
Yep. So it's going to be tricky. I mean, it's not going to be I think everybody hears and our customer understands that, like, yeah, I mean, this is going to be probably this is going to be a long road. This could be a 10-year goal or more, or we might not ever get it.
Exactly.
Like, we're gonna try our best, but the limitations on that class with that engine is it's pretty staggering.
Oh, yeah.
Just because of this, just because of the physics of that engine,
Yeah.
and then the fact that you have to use an old engine. Well, everything under the sun's been done, so
Yeah.
we'll see what we can do, I guess.
Yeah, and it's hard. There's some people out there. I mean, I love land speed racing, and the community is so great. But every once in a while, you get that one guy that's, I've got a custom crankshaft that I had designed and made, but I'm not going to tell you anything about it. Or, I've got, and it's like, come on, like, I understand you don't want to give us your secrets, but, help us out a little bit. And it's just, no, absolutely not. And then you meet the other guy that's like, this is exactly what I did, and they want it to be a friendly competition because, if you beat their record, then that gives them motivation to come back and beat your record, and it just pushes the whole the whole record higher and higher.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, it's one thing if you're going out and then you're trying to beat your own record. Well, that's cool. But if you have somebody else that's hot on your tails after you beat it, well, fuck, that makes it so much more fun.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's hard enough as it is to try and do it. So
yeah.
But yeah, so XF naturally aspirated, and then he wants to go for the blown class as well.
Oh, nice.
Which that one's, I think we have to get up over 200 in that class. So we're pretty excited to go after that one because it's a little easier with, I guess, the power adders, you know, to kind of get around some of the inherent flaws of the flathead, but obviously still a very difficult record to go for as well. But
yeah, you're chasing that little red hat, which is the most expensive red hat anybody ever gets.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's the same thing like with the Streamliner. You know, I want a 200 mile an hour record with that car, but it's such an undertaking to go over 200 mile an hour. And
oh yeah,
it's so much harder, and that's why I took time off to do the Roadster, just so we had something to play with and practice in and test and tune for when the Streamliner's done. That way we're not waiting another 5 or 6 years for me to get it finished. We can actually go out and compete now.
Oh, absolutely. Not to mention just the cost of, you know, of the undertaking of building thing for parts and whatnot, you know, for whatever that Streamliner is going to take. You know, the thing's beautiful. I'm excited to see you get that out there and run it.
Yeah, thanks.
But yeah, it's, I guess the big thing we've been dealing with right now too, and I don't know if it's like this over where you're at, but we're having issues with shortages on stuff.
Yeah, I saw today on I think it was Facebook, you were looking for some tubing.
Yeah.
Since I've got you on here, there's a local tubing supplier that I deal with, and they usually have that stuff. So I'll call on Monday for you.
I appreciate that.
And all the stuff I get from them
is like every steel yard and whatnot I've talked to around here, if I can even get them to call me back half the time, it's like a U.S. Made DOM tubing doesn't exist right now. It's just like, oh, if you find some, let us know.
Yeah,
because like, that's where we're at right now. Shit.
Yeah, I just ordered some 1 3/4 and 3 inch for a vintage dragster frame I did a few weeks ago, and I was kind of surprised it all showed up and it was U.S. made tubing.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely call and check on that, because it's the same thing. Like I saw that you said you'd had problems with it. Anything other than U.S. or Canada based tubing, I can't bend it. It just it kinks and ripples, and it.
Yeah, the India stuff, man, it's just, I can't believe. First off, the quality of just looking at it externally, what the tubing looks like compared to, you know, it's got all the, like little divots and imperfections in it and stuff. And then we've had just the local stuff we've dealt with anyway. We've had issues bending it where, you know, you'll bend the stuff and then you don't get any spring back at all. And it's like, well, that's a clear indication this whole tube is garbage.
Yeah.
You know, and then we also had some sizing issues with it where, like, the thickness of the tube consistency was way off. Like, try and slip another tube inside of it, and it's like it just kind of ripples all down the tube.
Yeah.
Without having done anything to it. So we can't have that, you know, especially not in any of the scenarios we're putting the stuff in. You know, it's got to be good. Yeah, high quality stuff. So, and
I think that's one of the main reasons. Like my Roadster is not going to be done for Bonneville this year. Is I still have to order the floater axles and a crank trigger and all that stuff. And we're 7 weeks out before having to go in the trailer.
Yeah.
I could call and get axles made, and they might say, "Oh yeah, we'll have them to you next week," or they could be like, "Hey, it's going to take 6 months." It's just one of those things that at this point it's not worth rushing for me. And if we have to wait another season, we're going to wait another season. You know, I don't want to go out and somebody get hurt or us miss something or cause more damage than we should just by taking our time.
Yeah, it's not worth it. It's not worth the risk.
Yeah.
You know, we got a bell housing we're still waiting on. We ordered one, waited 9 months to get it. It finally shows up, and then realized that the bell housing the transmission that was spec'd was not the correct bolt pattern for what we were getting.
Oh man.
So, okay, well, I'll send it back. That was 9 months ago. I'm still waiting on the new one. So
Yeah.
that's fun.
Oh yeah. What is it? We're still waiting on the fuel system on the Roadster. I ordered a Holley. What is it? It's a high micron, but it's one of the reusable clean. Take it apart and clean it. Billet fuel filters. I ordered it in, August?
Yeah, it's
And
been a long time.
It's still not here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Like something like a nice fuel filter, they don't exist anymore. It's so weird what you can find and what you can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is it? The little black ones that they've got, the little inline.
Yeah, the little inlines. Because I'm running a pre-filter and a post-filter from the pump, and
Sure.
it's just, who would think that would be lost on a boat in the ocean or whatever,
Yeah.
I don't know where
So
they source them.
What are you looking for? Like 100 and a 40 or something?
I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look through my notes because I had the pump that's on it is a crap. Now, do you remember what that pump is, Brian?
Aeromotive.
Yeah, it's an Aeromotive, and it had a big pre and post filter on it off the other car. It came off my Daytona, and I'm just like, man, this is big and bulky. So while waiting on that Holley filter, I just went ahead and got all the fittings and hold downs that I wanted for that. And I'm gonna run what was on the pump to begin with.
Sure. Well, yeah, if you let me know, I've got some of those Hollies, potentially extra ones sitting around here. So
Okay.
if that helps.
Yeah. And for I know we're kind of jumping all over the place. I think that's the common theme of this podcast is we can't stay on a straight line. But with you running two different classes, is that going to be a yearly change, or are you going to take two engines and swap them out on the salt?
Well, I think so. So the first year that we're trying to run is going to be next year.
Okay.
This year we were shooting to bring kind of the rolling chassis and body out, have it go through tech, make sure that if there's anything we need to change or whatever, we can get ahead of that. Mm-hmm. And then ideally we bring it out next year and try and do our first runs with it, get the licensing and whatnot. And then from there, his goal was to have, a couple of engines so that we could interchange, so that, if we're out there and, we're running the NA class and something happens, we blow the engine, we'll have another engine on hand ready to go. Yeah. So we can pull it out, swap the new one in and shoot for the other class. So that's that's what we've been talking about. We'll see. Eventually, I'm sure it'll get there. It's going to take time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm really excited to see your car out there and the new car Brian Bass is building. I mean, all of a sudden there's so many cars popping up that are going to be coming in the next year or two. And it's very exciting. Yeah. And I'm hoping what it does is, not that Bonneville's an old man sport, but there's a lot of older guys that are kind of retiring, and it's like in every motorsport, you want to see the new guys come in with that fire under their ass to get motivated and bring in new cars and not just recycling the same car over and over again. And,
absolutely.
I mean, I think it's going to be a really good transition when a lot of these new cars start coming in. Because that's my favorite in the tech line. When you see a new car roll up, everybody's eyes light up and everybody wants to tech the new car. It's
yeah, I suppose you don't want to just go over the same stuff you've been looking at every year, right? Yeah. It's kind of nice to see something new.
Yeah, because then you get to see everybody's going to do something different. So new ingenuity and a new outlook. And I never thought about running it that way. Or that's a really cool setup on the front suspension or this, that, and the other. So it's good to get ideas too. And
for sure.
I mean, that's how I got into this. I started going to Bonneville, and then I wanted to build some cars. So I'm like, well, tech kind of scares me because I'm going to drive 30-something hours to get here, and they're going to turn me around and tell me to go home. So I started volunteering with tech, and I think I've been doing that for 5, 6, maybe 7 years. But it's really helped me in being able to design and build race cars for the Salt, because you get to see what they like, what they don't, what's a really bad idea, and what's kind of clever. And they're not going to yell at you for being in the pit crawling all over their car. If you're wearing the orange hat, they just kind of let you look and touch stuff.
Yeah. Can you take this cover off for me, please? I want to see what's under here.
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't sound nearly as bad just being some guy.
It's a good idea too, especially when that Bonneville rule book is so. kind of vague and contradictory
Yeah,
at
it's
times.
open to
you know?
interpretation to a point. Yeah.
What's that?
It's open to interpretation to a point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the struggle. Like I've got 5 or 6 rule books, and I'll read it. Brian will read it. I'll call Kiwi Steve and like, explain this to me. I'll call Kiwi Paul and say, I don't understand this. You know, this could be taken 10 different ways from Sunday. Which one do you want? And,
Right, exactly. And I think too, I've had a couple conversations with some of the tech guys, and I get the impression a couple of times that have been like, kind of like, why are you overthinking this? You know, but it's like, well, this should have been a pretty straightforward answer, but it doesn't seem like that's what I'm getting here, you know?
Yeah.
And you don't want to have to redo it. You don't, like you said, you don't want to haul it all the way out there and be like, well, that's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's bad. I mean, that's one thing that why I've been trying to email back and forth with them as much as I can, because especially for us, like the last thing I want to do is disappoint our customer. You know what I mean? Like, cool, we spent all this money to get out here, and I guess we'll give it a shot next year. You know, that really sucks, especially because you only got essentially the 2 weeks out of the year to be able to do it, right?
Yeah.
So
and one thing that I've actually learned from Kiwi Steve that helps if you're like I've seen him do this when somebody questions a decision that the tech inspectors say, he makes you find in the rule book the rule that is in question, and you have to read it out loud to somebody. Like you have to read it to Steve or your inspector, and that totally changes it because you can see that light click when you say it out loud versus internal monologue. And I've noticed that helps. Like if I get stuck on something, I'll read it out loud to somebody and be like, what do you think this means? To make sure I'm not disillusioned to thinking it's something totally different.
100%. We do that here in the shop back and forth, which really helps. But then sometimes it's like, well, wait a minute. Are they maybe trying to like leave this gray area open here? Like what? So
yeah.
But that's half the fun though, right? Because that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Trying to find a way to do it in, fit within that rule book and make it happen. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'd be boring if they were all spec cars and all identical. And
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to see your car. Are you still trying to bring it out this year, or is that going to be on hold?
Yeah, that's the plan. Provided we can get the steel we need. I ordered what I thought was going to be more than enough tubing. We still have what should be enough, but if we have any miscalculation whatsoever on the rest of the frame stuff that we're doing, I just like to have an extra one sitting here, 1 or 2 sitting here, just for a misbend or cope that goes awry or whatever, because it happens.
Yeah, and just so I know, you said that was 1 5/8 120 wall.
134. So we went over what they were speccing just in case. Didn't want to have any inconsistencies in the tube, and also didn't want to, if something changed in the future and they went to a heavier wall, I wanted to still be good. Since we're not really concerned about weight,
it
seemed like a good idea.
Okay.
So
because most of the stuff I have is 1 3/4 OD, but I'll call first thing Monday and we'll check on that.
Cool.
I mean, it'd be a little bit of a drive for you, right? I mean, I could ship it to you, but shipping right now is so astronomical that it'd probably be more economical to drive or meet somewhere.
Yeah. It's I don't know. It's crazy too. Is how insane the cost has become on this stuff. It's like the pricing I've been getting for stuff that's not even U.S. made steel. It's like one tube is damn near the cost of half of what it costs to get all the rest of this tubing when I ordered it originally. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, we were talking about that last week, like how the material, some of it's tripled or if not more. It's really putting a hurting on everybody. Yeah,
I paid a few months ago. I just couldn't believe it. Like when I got to the register, man, a sheet of 18 gauge steel, just standard cold rolled, nothing crazy. It wasn't draw quality. It wasn't any crazy shit like that. It was like $240 for a sheet.
Yeah.
When I'm used to paying $70 a sheet for that stuff.
Yeah.
Or 70, 80, whatever. But
yeah, I mean,
those days are gone.
Oh yeah, and it's bad because like before, I'd keep 2 or 3 4x8 sheets of quarter-inch P&O, 3/16 P&O. I mean, all different sizes for cutting brackets and plates and whatever I needed. And now I don't want to order anything. It's $1,000 a sheet for a piece of, sheet of 7 gauge. So one thing I've been doing is, I mean, if anybody out there can use it, it's cheaper for me to have it made through Send Cut Send, and then I don't have to have $1,000 sheet laying here that I need a 6-inch square out of. So
sure.
It's sad.
Yeah, one thing I've ended up having to do too for kind of that same deal is that, and I don't, of course, none of those people are going to listen to this, so I guess it's okay. But one of the steel yards I deal with here, their cut scrap price hasn't changed. So if I find a half a sheet that they like sheared for something and then put the rest into the, cut section, well, I get it at the old price still. So it's a bit more, dicking around because you got to sort through the stuff and find what you need. But pricing is a lot better.
Yeah,
it sucks that it's not a full sheet, but that's all right.
That's a bad thing. Like my local steel supplier, they used to have a remnant section, and you could go in, same thing, plate that they would cut or quarter sheets, and they couldn't get people to work it, so they closed it.
Yeah.
It's just like, man, that sucks. That was my saving grace to save a little bit of money, and now that's by the wayside, and you have to buy full sheets if you can even get them.
Yeah, just gotta keep that scrap bucket around and start picking through that still.
Yeah, I've got
just willy nilly throw stuff away now.
Yeah, I've got 4x4 sheets out of there that are totally skeletoned, but I've got like a 4-inch rectangle in the middle that I'm waiting to use that last little piece. But it's just so expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited to see your Bonneville car.
Thanks, man. I'm excited to check yours out too.
Yeah,
should be fun.
Yeah, I like looking at everybody else's stuff. I'm sure mine's going to be borderline cringeworthy. Like I'll be nervous when everybody else is looking over it.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, you know how it is.
So humble.
I mean, you know exactly how it is.
Yeah.
You take so much time and pride in something, and you don't want somebody to find something you missed or tell you like, why did you do it this way? It was so much more simple. This, and that light comes on. It's always nerve-wracking the first time you take something anywhere. Yeah,
well, and it's, I think it's easy to get jaded by this stuff too, because when you're building any of these projects, it's like every single little flaw that you see in it is always there. Like, oh man, this little thing or that little thing, like I could have done this better.
Catches your eye every time you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But 90% of people, like, this is the first time they're seeing it. They haven't been looking at it for, every day for a year or two, so it's, I don't know, it's good to take that perspective too, it's good because it means that you're always continually trying to strive for pushing to that next level and getting better and, and whatnot. But it is definitely frustrating and feels like a character flaw sometimes, I do the same thing.
Yeah, and it's funny, like I'd almost rather take a car to like Good Guys. Well, first of all, I don't like car shows, but I'd rather take something to Good Guys and somebody at Good Guys pick the car apart than take it to Bonneville. You're at the holy grail mecca of hot rodding, and you don't want to be the last person picked on the field out there. It's
absolutely.
It's just there's just something about Bonneville that it's a whole different atmosphere for the people that haven't been there, and it's I mean, it makes me nervous. Like even when I took the Streamliner chassis out, I mean, I was super nervous to have people look over it.
Sure.
But,
yeah, I can see that. I mean, you got some pretty heavy hitters out there too. I mean, as far as people that are building stuff,
Yeah.
I mean, some of those cars that roll in, man, holy shit! It's like you go look at any of the stuff Trapani is doing, and obviously, it goes without saying, like anything coming out of that shop is spectacular.
Oh yeah.
It seems like it always has been, and then you go to the level of what they're doing with the race car stuff. It's like, man, it's just amazing.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
I'm sure they feel that way too, though, when they bring their stuff somewhere.
Oh yeah, and I mean, just like, the fit and finish on their cars too is.
So and so's looking at it. Fuck, are they picking it apart?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or maybe not. I don't know. Maybe they know.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like I know Andy Leach and his crew, and I always come up and I'm like, hey, you guys ready to fail tech this year? And they're like, that's not really funny. They kind of awkwardly laugh.
Yeah,
It's like,
his car they brought out last year, man. Holy shit, was that amazing? That
oh, yeah,
34
yeah,
Chevy.
yeah, that thing is super cool.
Oh God,
Yeah,
just amazing.
yeah, and I remember seeing that car at Andy's shop when they were still building the nose and the front end, and I mean, it's such a neat piece, and it's got that look.
Yeah,
It's going faster than the record is sitting still.
yeah,
It's a really cool piece.
yeah. Yeah, I could have stared at that thing all day. We walked over in their pits and stuff. Kind of, they were in the middle of, I don't know what they were tearing down, so I didn't want to, be that guy that's like hovering over somebody's shoulder, like, oh, what's this part you got going on here? Whatever, because they were clearly thrashing to get back out. So
Yeah, that might have been the steering when they had like a weird vibration out last year, and that could have been they were tearing the front end apart.
yeah, they had that whole thing ripped apart. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's amazing to look at that stuff. Definitely, like you said, it's nice to see that perspective of how somebody else did it.
yeah,
Yeah.
So, and sometimes too, it just kind of knocks you in the face. Like, man, that was so simple. Like, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah. And it's funny, like me and Brian talk about it all the time. So a big inspiration for my car is the Bean Bandits modified roads, or the yellow 27. And you look at that car, and there's so much stuff not there that it doesn't look like it's a real race car.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it could run.
Yeah, and it's like I tried to follow that principle of clean, simple, tidy, less is more, and it's like I've got 10 times more shit in my car than theirs, but I don't even understand how it's possible.
Right.
It's not like I was just throwing stuff in there to add more stuff, but it's just that car is just so clean and sanitary, and it's not missing anything, but it just looks like it's missing. But that's a whole nother art to race car stuff when you can make it look like there's no way it even starts up and runs, and it's out there racing.
Yep, that's elegance.
Yep. Yeah, and it helps that the Bean Bandits have been out there forever, and they've got it down to a science.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. Well, our next question is: how did your childhood or upbringing affect your work ethic and professional career? I'm hitting you with some of the deep questions this week.
Oh boy, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that is a direct correlation as to why I am the way I am, and why I have any kind of success or perceived success, I guess, is from how our parents raised us. We grew up out in the country, so we did a lot of country kid shit. Our house was heated with just to give you a kind of like an idea, I guess, is our house was heated with just a wood burning stove in the winter. So every fall, we'd go through just like cords and cords of wood that my dad would get brought in, and we'd have to sit out there and split wood and whatever else,
Mm-hmm.
That was just kind of the norm of life, I guess. And our parents did a really good job of hammering into us at a young age about the value of money, and I guess perhaps maybe the lack of real value in money, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And kind of what those two things mean, I guess. So anytime we wanted something growing up, it was you had to work for it. So you want a new bike, like what? Or I should say, you want this like special bike or whatever. Well, you have a good bike, so if you want this one, how are you going to get it? All right, well, go mow lawns, go pick rocks for the farmer, all that type of shit. So that it kind of taught us that nothing comes free, and taught us how to be self-sustainable, and taught us the value in hard work.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is kind of the key to anybody being successful, really. More often than not, you hear about, people who are successful, like that's the number one thing they will always tell you, is that like it's just hard work. You know, you see the tip of the iceberg, but you don't see all the, you know, years and years and years of grinding and just trying to make it.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people always message me like on social media, and they're like, "There's more to it than just hard work, isn't there?" And I'm like, "No, it's, you know, it's what I do isn't some great talent. I mean, you know, I might have some talent or was gifted with seeing things a different way, but it's not like I just woke up one day and magically I could do everything. It's, you know, it's all hard work and effort. You know, 99.9% of what anybody that's successful or does high quality work in this industry, that's all it is. It's just effort and not giving up. Like there's so many times that any of us like, oh man, this is hard, I could give up. But that's how you fail.
The work
you showed
ethic.
up. That's what the difference is. You showed up to do the work, and you just put your head down to do it. And it's such a cliche thing, you know. It's super easy to fall back on that, but like that's what it is. There's no way around it. It's like if you want to be successful at anything, doesn't matter if it's building cars, metal shaping, playing in a band, or whatever. It just takes time. You know, time in the saddle to learn it and figure it out. You know.
Yeah, and I mean, you just have to do your best every day. I think we've talked about it on here before, but when I talk to vocational kids, I'm like, I don't care if you want to be the best burger flipper in town, have at it, dude. If you like flipping burgers and you do a good job to the best of your ability every day, you're going to be desirable because every restaurant is going to want you to flip their burgers. You know, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You just have to do the absolute best you can and just keep pushing to be better and show up every day. And things will just fall into place. You know, everybody's always like, oh, you know, you got so lucky. And no, you just manifest your own luck. Yeah. You don't take total failure as an option.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the other side of that too is, I feel like that maybe it gets talked about, but not as much, is accepting that there's going to be a good percentage of people that won't accept that as an answer as to why you're successful and they're not. And they'd rather make up excuses for why they believe you're successful and they're not, because they don't want to be faced with the reality that, like, well, if I just put in the time, it'll, you know, eventually I'll get where I want to be. Well, fuck that. They must have had, you know,
that's too much
must
work.
have help, or, you know,
couldn't have been
they
that
must have
easy.
done this or whatever.
Yeah. And it's total lack of accountability. And, you know, it's like, for me, the way I grew up, like I grew up pretty poor. You know, I didn't have fancy things. You know, my family's, we were below the poverty level growing up, and I didn't have many friends. So it's, you know, for the way that's kind of influenced me is I like to work because I like to be alone. You know, like, what else am I going to do? Sit at home? Like, it's one of those things. It's all these little things that happen growing up, like with you and your work ethic. And, you know, with me, my parents, if you want something, same thing. You have to earn it or you have to make it, because we physically can't afford to just buy you things. You have to go out there and work for it or make it yourself. And it just kind of translates from that. And even dealing with, you know, not having very many friends growing up, I think that even added into it, because then it was, you know, you see all these people that have everything they want that aren't really your friends at school, and you have two options. You can just be bitter and envious, or you can go out there and you can earn what they have that you want. And I mean, it's all that stuff throughout your life that kind of mold everybody as a person. And I have found everybody that builds cool stuff to a high level and, you know, is successful, they didn't have an easy childhood. You know, whether it's struggling in school, struggling with friends, financially struggling, this, that, and the other, it wasn't easy growing up. You know, there was always something that you had to work on physically or personally to get to where you are. And that struggle always, it's like a sliding scale. Your struggles get a little bit better, but then you find new struggles for yourself to deal with. And I'm a glutton for punishment. You know, I just keep adding more so I have more to struggle for, but it keeps me growing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other side to that coin too is that for me personally, and I'm sure it's probably the same for you and other people that are in this boat, all the things that I find great value in life and the things that I really want to get out of life can't be purchased with money.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
you know, I want things that you can only get by putting in the time to earn them,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yep.
earn the knowledge to be able to do them, you know, and fortunately, that's not something you can just go buy.
Yeah.
Like you can buy the product of that, but you can't buy the ability to do that, you know, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is one of the main drivers, I guess, and continuing to just try and push and like every day, just, you know, try and learn new stuff, teach myself new stuff, you know, and try and expand because, you know, it's like there's this level that I want to get to, and the better I get at things, the further and further that level gets.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you just start figuring out that, oh man, I can do this. Well, suddenly your whole world opens up to this other side of things that you didn't even know existed yet because you weren't, like, your mind wasn't ready for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like we talk about that a lot here at the shop is like, if you get to the point where you don't feel like you're learning anymore, or you don't feel like you can be taught anything anymore, it's time to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right. Like, you know, you've given up on trying to elevate
Yeah.
to the next level.
Yeah.
Because there's always another level. Doesn't matter how good you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And with what you're saying too, money can always be taken away, you know, cars and tools, and that stuff's temporary. You know, I mean,
Yep.
the economy could tank tomorrow and everybody loses every dollar we've ever made. We could lose the power grid and our equipment doesn't work. But for knowledge and skill, that can't be taken away. You know, I
Right.
mean, you can give it away for free to other people and still retain it. You know, it's the only thing in life that we can give away freely, or we can sell our knowledge while still retaining it. And
Right.
you know, I'm just like you are. You know, I like learning new things and pushing my limits, and you know, growing as a craftsman and as a human. And I mean, I hope I never come to the point in life or in my career where I'm just like, nah, I know enough. You know, I mean, that sounds terrible. You know, and
I've had enough with life challenges.
yeah, and I mean, and it's funny because everybody's like, well, what would you do if you just get sick of what you're doing? I'm like, I'm gonna go be a Walmart door greeter. You know, it's if I'm sick of being challenged or challenging myself, I want something mindless that I don't even have to think about. You know, it's
Right.
it'd be really tough. Like I don't know if there's anything else that could challenge me the way doing what I do does, mentally and physically.
Yeah, I can't even imagine getting to that point because it's like I try to find the challenge in everything, try to do every little thing. Like I got 5 little tiny brackets. I try every one that I do. I try to make it a little different to see if I can make it easier, make it better to end up with a better end result.
Yeah.
100%.
And I get so frustrated when it's like everybody's like, good enough. Like that is the one. I have like 5 or 6 keywords that infuriate me, and that's one of them. Good enough. You know, it's ugh.
No,
No.
you get
No,
chastised
absolutely.
pretty hard if you utter that
Yeah.
statement around here.
Absolutely.
Oh, really?
No.
That's
Yeah.
good enough? Why don't we see how far you can take it?
Yeah.
You know,
My
like that. The other thing too that that I like asking, and it's not to disparage anybody, but it's just to keep that mental, I guess, acuteness in the front of their mind is like, a lot of times we'll be working on stuff, and they'll bring me over to like, hey, let's, here's what I got going on. What do you think? And the question will be, is that the best you can do?
Yeah.
Not meaning like, hey, this is shit, but
Yeah.
like, this is good. Is this the best you can do?
Yeah. And
And
the
it
other,
should be yes.
yeah, and the other side of that coin, which I really struggle with, is because I know I can always do better, but there always has to be the threshold of budget.
Yeah.
And it's like
Yep.
lately I've been blurring those lines of good enough because I hate it because it's never good enough, but is it acceptable for the client's budget and expectations?
Right.
So it's
Yep.
I hate that
it's
part of it, but you have to.
Yeah, and that's kind of that's the give and take, right?
Yeah.
Is delivering the best possible thing you can, and still trying to be mindful of that, because it's real easy to get carried away,
Yeah.
And it can be real easy for the customer to get carried away and not realize, like, hey man, you're kind of hitting outside of your level here, like rein it in, like
Yeah.
if your initial budget of what you're talking about is X amount, and now you're throwing all of these like extravagant things in there, like we're going to hit that pretty quick,
Yeah.
like
Mm-hmm.
it's managing expectations, right?
Yeah.
Making sure that everybody involved is on the same page. And that's probably one of the hardest things to do with this craft,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard. I'm in the same boat as you. I mean, I know you don't ever estimate things, right? It's strictly time and materials.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really hard for some people to like grasp,
Yeah.
but the reality is that, like, even though we may do a 32 Roadster, and then tomorrow another guy comes in, wants to do a 32 Roadster very similar to that one, they're never the same.
Never.
Like the amount of time that goes into them is never the same, because every customer is a little different, every project's a little different,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's self-imposed on the customers. Like sometimes it's like, man, you got to stick with the clear, direction we started with, and don't change the engine 5 times or decide to go backwards on this. And then suddenly later on, you're like, well, why does it cost so fucking much? Well, we didn't decide to redo all this work just for fun.
Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, like you said, it's super hard for a lot of people to understand that, but for me, I think it protects both parties, because I mean, for me, like, we'll just say somebody came up and was like, I want you to build X, Y, and Z. And I say $250,000.
Yep.
Cool. $250,000, no problem. What happens if, in reality, it's only $70,000? The customer could feel like they're being ripped off. But even if I don't charge them that much, they'll be like, well, he still told me that, so is he trying to rip me off in the beginning? Or what happens if it costs $400,000? It's
right.
It's better. I understand some people have to have a budget, this budget conversation, but what I try to do is I always ask, what is your budget? I put it in their court, and they're like, well, I want a 32 5-window coupe, and I'm only willing to pay $15,000. Well, then I'm not the right shop for you.
Yeah.
But
don't expect it's going to cost or be less than what you can go buy one for, because that is never the case.
No.
Yeah. And I always tell people, like, it's 3 to 4 times minimum what you can buy one for. Because, by the time you start putting custom stuff in and you're building it, you're never, I wouldn't say never, sometimes you do, but the vast majority, you're never going to get that money back out of it.
Yeah.
Like,
well, just look at the parts list on just your standard 32 Roadster, let's say, from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be, just in parts cost, you're going to be damn near what you can go buy one for.
Yep.
That's not even, haven't even turned the welder on. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And, by the time you get, a rolling chassis with, a somewhat traditional chassis with a quick change, you're talking $15,000 to $20,000 for a rolling chassis, and then $20,000 to $25,000 for a steel body, depending on availability and where you get it. So
and what kind of shape it's in.
Yeah, you're almost $50,000 in the hole and you've not done anything yet. You still have to buy engine, transmission,
Yep.
plumbing, wiring, paint. I try to break it down for people. If they need a number, I'm not going to give somebody a number, but I'll be like, I'll do pretty much what we're doing here. Paint, you can $20,000 starting out. If it comes in under that, great. But expect to pay $20,000 for a paint job, and just kind of break it down to what the average cost of things are. And if they start to flinch, I'm not the right place.
Yeah. Well, and I think, that kind of comes down to, we have a kind of a joke every now and then that we talk about here at the shop. It's like no first timers, because it's an education process with the customer, and because they don't know, how would they know? Just like if you're going to get a house built or something, you have no idea what the costs are. Well, it's our job to educate them. And at the same token, the best thing that the customer can do, and I tell this to people all the time, to customers, well, if I want to get something built, like, what's the best way for me to go about it? Establish what your realistic budget is that you can afford, and be very transparent with the shop. They're not just going to try and fuck you because you're like, oh, so I've got $250,000. No, they're trying to be realistic with their time. So that they know, okay, here's this budget. Let's do everything we can to stick under this, and so many people a lot of times try and pull I've seen this time and time again in different shops and whatnot, where it's just like they pull the Trojan horse thing, where it's like, well, I just want some rockers, or I just need this fixed. And then the car ends up in the shop. And then next thing you know, they have all this other stuff they want to do. And it's like, well, first of all, you weren't transparent about your timeline and that you really wanted to do all this, and you weren't transparent about your budget. So it's the single best thing you can do, in my opinion, as a customer. And if you are at a place where you feel like if you give them that number, like you don't trust them, you shouldn't be, neither of you should be working with each other.
Yeah. Like that just happened pretty much, it might have been yesterday. I've been talking with a guy. He's like, hey, I need this roof insert made. And, we've been trying to get this other shop to do it. And they said they shipped it, but we've been waiting months and we haven't received it yet. So I think we got hosed. Can you do it? I'm like, yeah, I can do it. And then I told him, the soonest I could get it in would be winter. Oh, we can't wait that long. Okay, I'm sorry. But that's it. And I'd be doing you a favor at that point, moving things around to try to help you out. And a few weeks went by. Okay, we're going to bring it to you, but we need you to jump through these 10 hoops. We need proof of this. We need contracts stating this dollar amount. And all of a sudden, my spidey sense went off. I'm like, man, something doesn't feel right here. And it's like they're backing me into a corner. And I told the guy, I'm like, I don't really feel good about this. And he's like, oh, my customer's been screwed over a whole bunch, and he's super anal, and he's just trying to protect himself. And I'm like, there's a difference between protecting yourself and throwing up red flags that this could potentially be bad for me.
Yeah.
So it's like, man, I just don't think I'm the right fit for this. You gotta trust your gut. And I mean, I ran it past my wife, and she's like, man, the last time we didn't listen to our gut, we kind of got screwed over on a car. And I want to help everybody out, but it's just sometimes, man, some customers they're not beyond help, but they've just been hurt and taken advantage of, or they feel that they have been. I mean, they could have, some customer could have been at a shop and he could have just been a fucking asshole, and the shop fired him. Well, that's not the shop's fault so much. They did what they needed to protect themselves, and the customer just wasn't happy with that decision. So it's, I mean, at the end
of the day, it comes down, it's all communication, and if you get that gut feeling, it's because there's something's not right with the communication, and just like you said, it's like anytime, even if it's not customer related, you get that gut feeling, it's like back off. It's like when you're tapping and you're like tapping a hole and you're like, I feel like, back off.
Exactly.
You're gonna snap that fucker.
I like
the same deal with customers.
I like your terminology, the Trojan horse, because that pretty much sums up a lot of situations.
Oh yeah.
Well, and it's not a bad thing either. I mean, we've had a couple of projects here that have that's happened in the shop where they just brought in for a couple little things and they turn into huge projects, and that's
Yeah.
great.
And it's not necessarily that they tried to sneak anything by you, but they bring it in for one thing, and then you start working on that, and you find out, well, we need to do this. And if we
Yeah.
do that, we need to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, and the
But
only go ahead.
sometimes too, I think it kind of goes with kind of what we were just talking about. Sometimes I almost feel like maybe they're just feeling you out, you know, like, all right, well, we'll give them this little bit of work and see how this communication goes and how the work goes. And then all of a sudden, okay, we're comfortable. Now I want to do all this other stuff.
Yeah,
And that, you know, that's fine too. It's
Yeah.
just, it makes things a lot harder to schedule.
yeah,
You know?
because that's the worst thing. Like I'm kind of gridlocked now, just because I've got a lot of big projects in here, and it's the same thing. Like, well, while it's in there, and it's like, ugh, like man, like, like I want to help you out, and I will, but man, that just pushed everything else back another 2 months. And you know,
Yep.
you're talking about communication, and there's, I think I've mentioned this on here, but I'm not the best communicator because I just don't deal with people very well. I mean, I can sit here and bullshit on a podcast, but you know, when it comes down to actual communicating important things clearly, it doesn't always work out that way. So what I have found is I do daily note sheets, like, and they're very detailed. Like a standard 8 hour shift is about a full page, single space typed notes, and it's a breakdown of everything I did for that week. Because you know, it's like I had a customer call me today, and he's like, "I got your note sheet, but while I've got you on the phone, let's just talk about it." And I'm like, I don't remember. You know, it's just like you're kind of putting me on the spot, and I'm kind of frazzled. It's like that's why I write all these things down. That way, I can go back and I can check where I left off, and the customer can check where I left off, and it's not 6 months down the road. Well, you told me this, so it's like, well, the note sheet says clearly that it's that.
Right.
And I found that, you know, every once in a while in the past, I would get customers like, well, I don't think that you did $2,000 worth of work this week. Explain to me how you earned that money. And then I'd have to go back and I'd be like, well, I think I did this and I think I did that. Ever since I implemented like a detailed note sheet that goes into a build book, I've not had
Yep.
anybody complain because they're like,
Yeah.
it's there.
It's really hard. That was one of the things that took a while. I shouldn't say took a while, but like it was one of the harder things to learn when we first got into business. Because I was 20 when we started the shop, and admittedly, you know, I was fucking 20. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff to learn, you know,
Mhm.
and communication was not my strong suit to begin with.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, you throw in what it takes to actually do this on a weekly basis, as far as time, and that's extremely difficult, you know.
Yeah.
So like, oh, I got all this work to do, and like you're trying to hit deadlines, and like you're physically working a shitload of hours, and then now I also need to take the time to, like, just like you said, try and remember, oh, what the fuck did I do Monday? I mean, I know where I got Friday,
Yeah.
but all the stuff that went from you know, A to B, fuck, you can't remember all the little stuff unless you do just like what you said,
Yeah.
and try and notate it. And that's been a huge help for us because we use T-sheets as well,
Nice.
and man, that's been great.
Yeah.
You know, we used to sit and, you know, write all that stuff out. Like, okay, first half of your day, what did you do? Write it all out, you know, so that I can convey this to the customer. And the second half of the day, same thing. Well, fuck, at the end of the week, then you're sitting transcribing that into an invoice. Like it's a lot of
Yeah. And
it's a lot of work.
it's kind of funny, like what we talked about at the beginning, where you have to have the bells and whistles to impress the client. You know, they have to feel comfortable with you. If you pull up a T-sheet spreadsheet, they'll be like, oh, okay, that's legit. Or you could pull
Right.
up a spreadsheet that you made yourself with a pie chart. It's the same information. They could both be false the same way, but oh, you're using T-sheets. They just feel more comfortable because it's what it was designed for. You know, it sounds silly. Like I hope nobody out there is, you know, using T-sheets to try to screw over customers and pad hours, but you could do it if you really wanted to. And it's
Yeah. Well, it'd be difficult to. I mean, you could, I suppose. It'd be difficult to maintain that.
yeah,
You know, it would be, yeah.
but at least
Especially if you have, multiple people on it, like, oh, what a nightmare that would be.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing how much better it's made my life, because I do all the office work and everything too.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, on top of all this shit, I gotta, try and make sure we're keeping all of this information so that we can, like you said, like just relay it.
Yeah.
Because it's, you can have some stuff where you spent a day fitting tubes, and like if that's all you wrote, well, that's a fucking 8-hour day.
Yeah.
Fitting tubes.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound impressive.
Yeah.
Looking at it,
Mm-hmm.
on the invoice, but like that's what it fucking takes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like when I get into that, like I try to convey it, like I worked on main roll cage hoop.
Yeah.
Took 6 bars. This was tedious because it's it lays back and it's tapered out. This is why it took so long. I set up this machine. I set this up. So I try to give detail. That way it's not fluff, but
right.
it conveys, oh, that's why it took a long time, because it wasn't 145 miter notching tubes all day. I try to convey, this is why this took so long. And I understand it sounds simple, but it really wasn't.
Right. Here's all of the information as to why it wasn't simple.
Yeah, because I mean,
and me trying to explain it in as the least amount mouth breathery way I can. I grab the tube, I fit the tube.
Yeah. Yep. Because like when I make a door skin, like in the note sheet I could say made door skin. Okay,
yep.
How long did that take? Or I could say, set up power hammer with this tooling, laid out grid, cut sheet, filed sheet, deburred sheet, did initial
yep.
shaping, test fit to buck, final shaped, set up Linux for profile A through F, and you walk it through and you're like, oh, that's why it takes so much time to build a door skin, not just whipped up a door skin, it's...
Yeah, it's especially with all the the TV shit that's out there, and people are like, oh, why does it take so long? They do it in 2 weeks on TV. It's like, yeah, they do it in 2 weeks because they have 70 people running around the clock doing the damn things.
Work 24/7.
Also, they're not great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a TV car.
Oh, yeah. That's the thing that's scary is how bad some of those cars look when you see them in person.
Mm-hmm.
The TV cars?
Yes.
Yeah, they're a lot of them are gross.
Yeah.
There are some though that pleasantly surprised by. You know,
not throwing them all in that pile, but it's surprising how many that do fit that.
Yeah, like I was talking about that today at lunch with a guy. It's the TV shows, the TV cars, the personalities. They're not meant for car people.
No.
They're really not.
No.
Because car people won't tolerate that crap. It's for, I guess I can't say my normal thing because that would be insulting to a large group of people that I don't want to insult. But it's just meant for people that like watching drama and...
Or even just like cars in general, but aren't really car people.
Yeah. It's
soccer moms eating Cheez-Its, man.
Yeah, they want to watch... They want to watch
and there's
people...
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, they want to watch people argue and bicker and the drama and the... people kicking chairs through doors and kicking ass, and that does happen, but that's not what most successful shops do.
No. And that's the thing. It's like I'm sure you get this too, where people are like, oh, when are you going to get a TV show? And it's like, I don't fucking want one. Like,
exactly.
You don't understand, like, all that stuff that you see on those shows that are like big to do shows, like that's all fucking made up.
Yeah.
Any shop I've ever been in that's like doing any kind of decent work, like if they came in with the film crew and whatnot, it'd be boring as fuck. Like, it's exciting to people like us, but for the average person, oh man, watch these guys work for an hour, like what?
Yeah, because it's like I don't want this to come across as like humble bragging or anything, but I mean, I've been approached by 3 or 4 different production companies over the years, wanting to shoot a pilot for Discovery Channel or whoever, Velocity. And I'm just like, I appreciate you reaching out to me, but I have no interest.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? We could make you famous. And I'm like, well, here's the deal. If you make me famous, can you guarantee me that you will provide for me a sustainable wage for the rest of my life? And like, well, we can't guarantee you that. And I'm like, well, what if you come in and destroy my reputation by altering and twisting and editing to where nobody wants to work with me anymore because you thought it would make good TV and destroy my reputation? And they're like,
Yeah.
well, that's just a risk you're going to have to take. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No.
I'm like, no. Because one of the contracts they brought me, like to even talk about it, it said like if they didn't like what was it? It was something about if they didn't like the person I was, they could hire an actor to represent me and the brand as me. So it's like,
Yeah,
oh,
no.
I signed this paper and you think I'm an asshole, so you're going to bring in some other asshole to make me look real bad and say that they're me. It's like, no. It's,
Yeah,
ain't nobody got time for that.
No. Well, and also like what a huge risk. Like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, so you get the fame and everything else. But like you said, are you going to guarantee that I'm not going to look like an asshole to all of the people that I like actually whose opinions I actually respect? Like,
Mm-hmm.
no. Like I don't want to, hold this stuff in too high a regard to do something just like you said, just get famous or
Yeah, just to sling some T-shirts for 6 months, It's like, I don't want to go to Walmart and see my face on a T-shirt that bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We got approached about doing basically like a bike build show, car build show. Same kind of deal. This company was trying to pitch it. It was a company trying to make a show to pitch to Discovery and Netflix and all that shit.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept trying to be like my brother and I talked to him on a Zoom call or whatever, and the guy kept trying to be like, well, so like you guys are from Minnesota, so like it gets cold there, huh? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, does that ever, create any kind of deadline issues and this and that? And it was like, dude, if you're trying to put in all this like drama bullshit based on a geographical situation, like I don't want any part of this. Like what the
Yeah.
It's just weird.
Yeah. It's like they're drumming, they're at the bottom of the barrel, like, how can we stir the pot?
Yeah. How many
Yeah.
different ways can we
Yeah.
add drama to this?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the dumb thing is that it's like, I was like, if you just came and actually filmed the difficulties of what's happening on a day-to-day basis, like that's enough.
Yeah.
Like you'll have gold. Like there's
Mhm.
plenty of
Yeah.
stuff in here where like,
Oh, and
hey, guess what? I just spent a day working on this thing and now I trashed it. I'm
Yep.
pretty upset about it.
Yeah.
And that happens.
Mm-hmm.
and they would make a show that people would, like us, would actually watch. They'd be pulling in a whole different demographic.
Yeah. And
Yeah. How much TV do you guys watch though? Like
Yeah.
No.
I don't ever watch those shows.
Yeah,
But,
never. And it's like with me, like I struggle at YouTube. Like it's because I want to represent myself well, so I want it to be filmed right and edited right and be a good representation of what I do and what I appreciate in the craft. And nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
They want it to be filmed on the phone like a world star video, and it's just like that's not how I want to represent myself. So
Yeah.
I really
Well,
struggle with
and
YouTube
that's
stuff.
kind of the other side of things too, is that now I don't understand why you would, when you have all of the control and power in your own hands to get it out on exactly like you just said, YouTube and Instagram and all that other stuff. Like, yeah, okay, so you get on TV, big deal. There's all
Yeah.
these other areas that you can have a large reach to the like specific crowd that you actually want to get to, and that's much more valuable
And
Yeah.
have all the
because
control.
now you'll get out to the right people that want
Mhm.
to have you do stuff, and you don't have to fake it or do any kind of bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
just be yourself, put your stuff out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we could probably spend 2 or 3 hours talking about about that side of it. I mean, there's just so much that goes into all of that, and
Yeah.
I just feel it always comes back to me wanting. I always want to represent myself a certain way. Like, I mean, I started the shop when I was 20 as well, and I did stuff, said stuff that wasn't very flattering of myself or the brand. But that's part of growing up. You live and you learn, and now I see the value in that a lot more. I definitely think before I speak on some things, and I let a lot more go now. And it's, I just want to represent myself in a certain way to the certain
Yeah.
people. Because, I mean, I've got a decent social media, whatever you want to call it, but in reality, there's probably 1,000 people in the world whose opinions matter to me, if that. I
Right.
mean, like,
Yep. Yeah, people that you really, really respect
Exactly.
what they have to say, because it goes back to that whole discussion about the value in knowledge and everything else that you can't just buy, and
Yeah.
that's why that those opinions matter so much, because
Mhm.
it's like that dude knows what he's talking about, has put in the work, knows what it takes to get to the point and do this certain thing I just did, and they're into it, and that makes me feel good. You
Yeah.
know,
Mhm.
Yeah.
it's great when people like your stuff, but when specific people, acknowledge it,
Yeah.
it makes it all that bullshit and everything else worth it, for
Yeah.
sure.
Because it drives my wife nuts. Like, I'll post something and it'll get, 400 or 500 likes or something on it, and that's great, and I appreciate the support. But there'll be one person, and I mean, I'll get a little choked up by it and be like, "Holy shit, this person follows me and they liked my stuff," and it's just like mind blowing. Like, again, I appreciate everybody that follows me, support and that stuff, and it's great, but it's just super impressive when it's that one person that you really look up to for multiple reasons, and they've acknowledged you and they appreciate what you've done. And
Yeah.
it's a big deal.
It's a fucking weird world we're living in,
Oh, I know.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
I would have never thought that. As I mean, like when I started doing this, like the big thing was like, oh man, I'm gonna get my work in a magazine. Fuck, someday I'll get it on the cover. Like that was goals, right? And now, as much as I hate social media for a myriad of reasons, I also appreciate it for those things like you're just talking about, because now you're accessible to people that you might never meet in your life, or maybe might have a chance to meet once in your life,
Yeah.
Yeah.
just because of paths crossing or not crossing or whatever. And now it's like, oh shit, cool, they're into it, and I don't know, it's kind of cool, it's neat,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
also I like a weird relationship with social media. Like it's so time consuming to
Yeah.
try and keep up with the business side, to keep posting things, and it's like, well, I know I got to keep this out there so people know we're still doing stuff, and then like I'll have long spurts where I just don't put anything up. I just because I don't know, I'm not thinking about it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll be out at a show or something, and I'll realize like people's perception when you're not putting stuff up, it's like it's almost like, oh, are you, they think you're not doing anything if you're not putting anything up. And it's like, well, what the
Yeah.
you know,
And like
it's a strange thing.
yeah, and I struggle with that because like I don't like car shows. I don't go to car shows, but there are a few that I've been doing like since the early days. Like the Cincinnati Cavalcade of Customs. Our indoor show. It's
Yeah.
I don't get any business from there. I never have. But if I don't go to it, he went out of business. He's not
Suddenly
here.
you don't exist
Yep.
anymore.
He must have went out of business. He's not here. And they don't think it. They tell their friends. Oh yeah,
Yep.
Cornfield wasn't there. He must be out of business. And then the rumor
Yep.
mill gets going, and it's so hard to squash that. So then you're stuck in this vicious cycle of wasting your time just going there, just so they're like, oh, you're still in business, and it's
Yep.
like, yep, but I don't want to be here. But
It's continual advertising.
yeah,
It's the same thing everywhere, it seems like.
yep, and it's
That stuff.
and that's a bad thing with social media is if you just drop off the face of the earth, they think you died or you've gone
Yeah.
bankrupt or you fled the country, and it just
It's like, no, I'm just busy. I just want to focus.
Yeah,
I don't want to
exactly.
spend 20 minutes trying to put this reel together so that it's like exciting.
Yeah, and I mean it's super hard for me, like being here alone a lot. It's like I had a guy here the other day. Like I filmed something for some drill bits that Spider sent me, and I'm like, hey, can you come open this box for me? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're standing here. I can't hold my phone and open the box. And he thought it was the weirdest thing ever. And I'm like, I just physically can't do it alone. Like it all of that, like filming stuff is so hard when you're doing it alone.
Just don't get into doing the like ASMR box opening videos.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that ruins my whole next month. Like, spoiler alert, that was what I was going to do.
Yeah.
Man.
No. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know.
So one final question, and this
Sure.
is our standard show question, is what is some advice you would tell young guys or anyone else looking to pursue fabrication more seriously?
Oh man, the thing that I would The thing that I would say is most important, it is kind of the hardest thing to grasp, I think, when you're first getting started in this, because it's incredibly difficult, especially when you're at, step one. I would say embrace the failure and strive for perfection, even though you're never going to attain it. Like, that's having that mindset, you will get to levels of work that you didn't realize you could.
Yeah.
Because more often than not, you're gonna scrap whatever you're working on, as long as you're keeping a high level of trying to keep yourself to a high standard, of work.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of lessons in those failures,
Yeah.
and you can't look at it as a failure. It's just, hey, tried this. Here's why it didn't work, but here's what I know now.
Yeah.
So now I can move forward with this. And that was one of the things that was really, really hard for me starting out, because, I wanted to get to this really good level and try and, have these really insane abilities. And it's like, you think you'll get there pretty quick, and it's not the case.
Yeah.
Like, it's just all time in the seat, and just sitting down and doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get your 10,000 plus hours in before you start to feel comfortable doing it. And then at that point, you get to a level where things are really rewarding, because you have stacked up all these failures to a knowledge base that you're able to jettison yourself into projects that you didn't know you were going to have the ability or thought process to try and achieve.
Yeah.
And to me, that's kind of, it goes back to everything we talked about in the last, in this whole podcast, is you should be trying to push for whatever that level of perfection is for you, and continue to find higher levels of it.
Yeah.
And just go for it. And, revel in the fact that you're never going to get there.
Yeah.
Because if you do, like I said, it's time to give up and be done.
Yeah. And is it, to be successful in business and your personal life, you have to embrace and you have to live in failure.
Yep.
Accepting failure and living with failure doesn't mean you're a failure. It just
Right. means
that you're taking the failure, and you're not beating yourself up for oh, I fucking suck. This was a stepping stone. It was a learning moment, and I'm going to use that to motivate myself to push forward. Look at everybody that is successful. I mean, I don't care about I don't care about his political viewpoint one way or the other, but Elon Musk is highly successful, whether you think he is or not, he is. He's done great things, he's done bad things, but he has failed more times than most of us will ever try in our life.
Yeah.
And that goes for anything. I mean, nothing just happens. Look at Ford and Carnegie and all these guys that helped with the Industrial Revolution and building the country into what it is. They failed so many times, and you're only seeing snippets of their success. It's just astronomical that it's mostly failure, but you have to accept that and deal with it.
Yep. Grow from it.
Yep, exactly.
It's the age-old saying, the master has failed more times than the apprentice has tried.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's what it is. People are, oh, it must be nice, or you're so lucky. It's like, I'm not lucky, and it's not nice. I got off the couch today, and I fucked shit up. I failed so many times today, on a personal level, on a professional level, whatever. But that's what life is. It's just a bunch of mistakes that come together, into what we have, and that's all you can do with it.
Yeah.
Everything's a chance to learn and to grow. If everything is easy and you never fail, you're going to be worthless, because you don't know what failure looks like. And when
Yeah.
when that day comes and you fail, you're going to be devastated. You know?
Yeah, or how to accept it, because
Yeah.
it is devastating.
Yep.
You know,
It is.
fuck yeah, it sucks when you spend a day or two working on something and then you get to the last step and you fucked it up.
Yeah.
Well,
And it's
start
funny
over.
because, you know, even failing from failures, you know, I mean, it's exponential. You know,
Yep.
you can go down that. It all compounds. But 10 years ago, if I would have messed something up that took me 30 minutes, I would have been pissed. You know, I wasted 30 minutes. This is bullshit. Now, if I screw something up that took a week, I mean, Brian's probably sitting. I'm like, well, that fucking sucks, and I just move on with it. You know, like, what are you going to do about it? Me being upset and mad, it's not going to do anything to better the situation. Like, yeah, there's still stuff that I do that I get mad about. We all have, you know, weak moments and we lose our shit, but it happens. But if you take it as a learning experience and the more you fail and learn how to fail and accept failure, it doesn't affect you as much. You know, in that devastating sense, you're like, well, this is part of it, you know, and you just move on with your life.
Well, and I think a lot of that too has to come down to the fact that, like, yeah, it sucks. You can be mad about it, but like, how mad are you going to be about it if you like continued forward with it and like put the piece in or whatever, and like, yeah, I accepted that I put that piece of shit in there. That's even worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, I guess we'll just redo it, because I'm not going to be able to live with myself if I put this piece in that I felt was unacceptable. Like, I don't want to compromise.
Yeah. And that builds exponentially. Like, I was talking to Bobby Walden once, and, you know, we were talking, it was some kind of Eastern, I don't know, it might have been some kind of Buddhism or something, but he talked about when shaping metal, if you're in a bad mood, you're going to put that negative energy into the panel's going to put the negative energy into the hammer, and the hammer's going to send it back to you, and you're going to be in this constant cycle. It's the same kind of thing, you know, like today I was working on my enclosed trailer and something made me mad, and I'm like, I almost wanted to kick what I was working on, but it's like, you know what? I just took a second and took a breath. If I put that negativity of me kicking something, I'm going to damage that, and then whatever it hits, and then I'm going to have more negative energy from what got damaged, and I'm going to be in that endless cycle. You know, so it's the same thing with everything. You're just
for sure.
It's the same thing. If you cut a corner and you put in a bad piece, that's that negative energy, and it's living there. And then that negative energy is going to give you bad vibes, and you're going to give it back, and you're going to be in that constant cycle of negativity. And you know, you just have to push through that stuff and not let it affect you as much as it could affect you.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a rule at the shop for that, specifically. Like, if you feel it welling up and you're getting upset, put your tools down and walk away.
Yep.
Because there is no good outcome for what's about to happen.
Exactly.
You force something trying to go in or coming out. Now you just compounded it and ruined something on a much more expensive level, and it's not worth it.
Yep.
Just take a step away. It's okay.
Yep.
We're not,
Yeah, you're in a bad mood making it go righty-tighty until it goes righty-loosey, and then you're in a real bad mood. You know, it's...
I just kept tightening until it loosened itself back up.
That's right. You know, it's just one of those things that, when I started seeing my therapist a few years ago, she's like, you know, you're dealing with a lot in life, and if you get to that point that you feel like you're going to have a rage moment, she's like, go run a mile. And I mean, straight up, you have to burn that energy out. You know, whether it's you go sit on the park bench in the sun and you just take some breaths, you just have to get it out. And you know, you're just releasing that negative energy from screwing more stuff up, and then you'll be in that vicious cycle.
Yeah, it's not worth it. It's not worth carrying any kind of negativity around.
Life's too short for that anymore.
It's too much of a burden to carry.
Exactly.
One other bit of advice I would give anybody, not just starting out in this stuff, but anybody that's starting a shop, maybe. Thrashes are inevitable. I mean, we all deal with it. There's those fucking busy times of year.
Mm-hmm.
Don't fuck with date night. That's like one of the biggest things I've learned is, like, my wife and I have date night, and like no matter what's going on, like I don't mess with that.
Yeah.
I always make sure to make that a priority, because this stuff's all great and everything, but family's super important.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
keep at the forefront. So
Yeah, and it goes back to, I think I say this almost every episode, is success looks like a lot of different things to a lot of people. And 16 years ago when I started out, success was a totally different place than where I am now. Like I'm happy with my success level because I have freedom. I mean, I could be here 100 hours a week if I want to, but I don't want that anymore. I mean, I love to work and I love what I do, but I like spending time, with my wife and working in the garden and living life, So you just can't let this stuff take over. Like
No.
it will. It's going to take over to a certain extent, but you can't let it destroy your life. There's too many hot rod guys that are, miserable because they've destroyed their marriages and their kids hate them, and they've done all this because they didn't find balance. And
Yep.
Balance is really key, and you have to find out what balance is for you as an individual.
Yeah, that looks different for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that was a really hard thing to try and tap into and figure out and realize. And luckily, my wife and I have really, really good communication. And her basically just laying things out, and being like, this is what I need. Like, I don't mind you working a bunch. Just like, I need to know. Because like there'd be nights where, so I don't have a regular schedule like a 9 to 5 person, we're like, well, I'm going to work. I'll be home at 5. Everything's, sometimes you don't know what the day is going to entail. I don't know who's going to, I don't know if I'm going to have a customer all of a sudden walk in at, the end of the day, and then now I'm here for another hour and a half. Like, and being able to identify that and just be like, these are my hours that I need to set aside for these certain things, and that I need to stay strict on that. And that allows me to be able to say, all right, well, these nights I'm staying late to work on this stuff. And I know that I don't have to sit here and wonder in the back of my mind, like, oh man, am I pissing her off? Like, is this okay? Like, I don't, like, is she going to have a problem with me not being home right now? No, she expects and knows because of that communication. So things are a lot smoother,
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah,
But
exactly.
I don't know. It's tough.
Oh yeah. I mean, we all go through it and we all have to kind of learn it. And we could tell everybody 100 times and they're still like, it's not that big of a deal. Everybody's going to have to learn that on their own. And it's important.
It is. Well, and it's tough too, because, if I could be here every hour of every day, absolutely, I'd love to. There's so much stuff I want to do that I will never have time to get done in my lifetime. But I also really like spending time with my family and doing those things. And like, this stuff without, all of the family dynamic and everything else, this stuff starts to lose its luster pretty quick if you don't have that balance of all of the rest of those things too,
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I mean, I think that's a good ending point. I was going to say, like, do you have any questions that you thought of for the podcast this week, or do you want to end it on that? Because I mean, that's a really good. I mean, that's a really good ending point.
Yeah, I didn't really have any question. Nothing that we didn't really cover.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
that's pretty much it, man.
Well, cool. I'm super glad you got to come on, and I'm really looking forward to seeing your car at Speed Week this year. Do you want to plug all your social media stuff, or do you want to refrain since you hate it so much?
Well, it's not like you know what I mean. I hate having to try and keep up with it.
Exactly. It's a love-hate relationship.
Yeah, exactly. It's great because it does a lot of. It's very useful, but yeah. So yeah, if anybody wants to check out my personal Instagram, I guess, is what I update the most for the shop stuff and everything that's going on, and that's at pineapple_Jay. That's probably where I put the most stuff. We're also on Facebook, Union Speed and Style. You can check out our website. That's pretty lacking because I don't really ever update it or put stuff on it. It's basically just here's how to contact us.
Yeah.
yeah, and we'll be one other thing. If people have made it this far into the podcast and they're in Minnesota for Back to the 50s, we will be having an open house at our shop on Friday, June 17th. We do a party every year for Back to the 50s. Well, since we've been in this building, for Back to the 50s, just kind of a big kickoff for the weekend. Shop's open. People can come in and see what we're working on. Most of the rest of the time, the shop's kind of by appointment only. So
Nice.
it's a good opportunity to come in and check out what we're doing.
What are the dates and the times for that? And throw out your address, too, for the people that don't want to look it up.
Sure. June 17th, basically kind of around 7-ish, and it'll go all night. And we are located at 340 Central Avenue in Osseo, Minnesota.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on, and I'm looking forward to catching up at Bonneville.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, no problem. So next week's guest will be Elijah Schroeder, also known as Schroeder Metalworks on Instagram. He's a really interesting guy. He's been to the shop a couple times. So I'm really looking forward to catching up with him. Please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review, and tell a friend so we can keep the podcast growing. Please submit any questions or comments you have to fabricationstationpodcast@gmail.com, and we can get those up on the show. And most importantly, thanks for listening and your continued support, and we'll see you next week.